Welcome to Kidmissing TV. Okay, this is the first case of April. I am recording this at the end of March because it's to go up this Wednesday, and yeah, that's going to be an absolutely crazy day. I have a doctor's appointment early in the day. I come home, I eat, finish getting ready, and go to a meeting. So I don't have time to do it. This is the story of Emeline. The picture that you see next to me is actually my great-grandmother. Her name was Nettie Mitchell. And Nettie told the story of Emeline as she recalled it from her youth. This case took place in Fayette, Maine. Fayette, Maine, very small town, as a lot of towns in Maine are. They're in Middle Maine, which is, it's north of Augusta. It's basically in the middle. Excuse me. Emeline Batchelder, later Gurney, was sent to Lawrence or Lowell in Massachusetts to work in the mills. Which city it was has kind of been lost to time. And she was sent at about 13. When she was 14, a grown man at the mill impregnated her. Her baby was adopted. She was sent home. She later met and married George Champlain and had a son. Her husband later left her and took her son. We don't know why. This story was related to now deceased author Judith Rosner for her book Emeline, and my great-grandmother is in the dedication to the book, in the book, because she's the one that told the story. Again, her picture is right here. Now, before I go more into this story, let me give you just a little bit of background on Nettie Mitchell. Nettie Mitchell was a society editor and a reporter for the local papers in that part of Maine. So that job automatically makes you nosy, first of all. Not in a bad way. I'm not insulting my great-grandmother. Matter of fact, my great-aunt also had the same job in Connecticut. So, in a small local paper that I can't get a hold of. So I have people on both sides of my family, my dad's and mine, that had the same job. Nettie was, like I said, my great-grandmother. My mother never knew she was her grandmother. And she used to be also the librarian in the small town of Fayette. And so my mother and her oldest sister would go to the library, and Nettie would read them books, and they loved her. They had no idea she was my mother's freaking grandmother, until my mother got her DNA results back and talked to her brother on the phone, talked to her sister, and talked to her brother on the phone that she found through her DNA. And he's like, "You do know who your grandmother is?" She said, "No." And he told her, and she said, "What?" "Wait a minute, that means my cousin was in my class." Mm-hmm. No earthly idea. And my mother said, "No wonder my mother left Fayette when she did. I look just like my sisters. My grandmother would have known." So that's the story of Nettie and how she relates back to me, and why this story is so important to me. The book was published in 1980. So going back, Emeline had been sent home because she had been impregnated. She was 14. This was an adult man. This was a crime. Anyway, she got married. She had a son. Her husband left her and took her kid. There's no why to it. But there are publicly available vital records and censuses that show what happened. When Emeline was in her 60s, she met and married a younger man. He was about 14 years younger than her. And the story goes, some people dispute this today, but I have no reason to dispute my great-grandmother or all of the other women who were little girls at the time that Emeline was an old woman, who remember what happened to this woman. I have no reason to dispute them at all. And these are women that my mother grew up around, knew her whole life. And it's so weird to have finally gotten to see and hear these women. And I will link you to American Experience, Sins of Our Mothers, The Story of Emeline, as well as the 3.5-minute interview with my great-grandmother, which I have saved on the channel. I will link both at the end of this video. Anyway, the story goes, and I have no reason to doubt it, the man that she married turned out to be her adopted son, which was learned when his family came to visit him and his new wife and realized who Emeline was. She was then shunned by the community. She was very, very poor. Some of the men in the community, including my great-great-grandfather, now his name wasn't Mitchell. Mitchell was Nettie's married name. But Nettie's dad and some of the other men in the community would send their daughters with food and provisions for Emeline. Winters up there are very hard. They're downright deadly. And so these men, because they couldn't be seen with her themselves, would send their young daughters who couldn't be sullied by her, even though these men that sent their daughters thought the whole thing was ridiculous. But because of the time period and because they were men, and married men at that, couldn't go see a single woman anyway. And their wives couldn't because the community would see them as sullied by her in some way, which, like I said, these men kind of rolled their eyes at. And I'm grateful that my great-great-grandfather was that kind of a man, and that some of these other dads were that kind of a man. And these girls would bring her food and, check on her. And one of the men in the community, he must have been single, came to check on her one day. Because none of the kids had heard from her. Nobody had seen her, tending what little food she had and stuff. And he saw her on the floor and he broke in and he called for help, but it was too late. So I want to tell this story in honor of my mother, my great-grandmother, my great-great-grandfather, and all the people who quietly helped this woman in her shunning. You know, they felt that they could send their 10-year-old daughters and it wouldn't be a big deal and they could feed her that way, you know. And it was a sneaky way of doing the right thing, you know. And she did eventually, unfortunately, pass away. Um, and I will link both, like I said, of those. I have the book where my mother actually wrote in it and stuff here. And my gosh, I treasure it. Let me show you the book. I think I know where the book is. I think it's right here. I'm not mistaken. Ow! It's right here. Because, yeah, it's right here. Ugh. Here it is. And my mother wrote, for my daughter Angie, Nettie was my grandmother, your great grand. Now you have a part of her always. Love, Mom. It actually has a dust jacket, which is kind of neat for a soft cover book, but so here's my mother's inscription. Oh boy, I gotta put this down here where it's not gonna be in front of Nettie's picture, and it says in the book inscription here, it says, the 1980 edition of Emeline contained the following author's note. Nettie Mitchell told me about Emeline. Nettie is 94 years old and still lives in Fayette, Maine. She knew Emeline when she herself was a child, and Emeline was an old woman. The story of Emeline Mosher, who was 13 when the book begins in 1839, was based on Emeline Batchelder Gurney, who lived from 1816 to 1899. So she changed the name in the book. So if you're looking for the name in the book, that may be why you're not finding it. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to put my great-grandmother's picture as the thumbnail because I don't have a picture, obviously, of Emeline. I have approximate drawings, but that's about it. They didn't really have pictures back then. And maybe they forgot to look up her first married name. You know, there could be reasons why they're not finding the right dates. Because according to American Experience, they traced it. And American Experience is a show from PBS, Public Broadcasting. And they do their homework. And the gentleman, David Hoffman, who did the interview with my great-grandmother and also hosted American Experience, did the research also. It makes it very clear, if you read the comments, that he did the research. He actually just wrote back to me because I wrote to him, you know, this is my great-grandmother, you know. I wish that I could put a clip in here, but I can't. So I'm going to leave it in the cards at the end, as well as the American Experience. I'm going to do both videos at the end so that you can watch it yourself and see these women that my mother knew her whole life. A lot of these women that talked about it, talked about their dads sending them to help this woman. And good for their dads. And I'm proud that my great-great-grandfather was one who stood up and sent his daughter to make sure this woman had food in the tough winters. And, you know, so God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining me. I know this isn't our traditional case, but it kind of is, because it's a 14-year-old little girl who was hurt and what happened to her at the end of her life because of what happened to her early in her life. None of which was her fault. So, I will see you Friday. Bye, guys.